not about championships, not about buzzer beaters. This is about a cold night, a stray dog, and a quiet decision that revealed a side of Michael Jordan the world rarely sees. It only took one sound to change everything. One moment, one pause, one decision that no headline ever planned to write. That night was not special, or at least, it wasn't supposed to be. Michael Jordan had lived through nights that shook the world. Game 6 nights, championship nights, nights when arenas exploded and millions held their breath. Compared to those moments, this night felt invisible. No cameras, no crowd, no cheers, just silence. Jordan had stepped outside late, long after most of the city had gone to sleep. The air was cool, the kind that settles into your bones and forces you to slow down. Streetlights hummed softly, casting pale circles onto empty pavement. His day had been heavy, not physically, but mentally. Meetings, expectations, the kind of pressure that never truly leaves even after retirement. Fame doesn't retire, responsibility doesn't retire, and sometimes neither does exhaustion. Jordan wasn't thinking about basketball. He wasn't thinking about legacy. He wasn't thinking about being Michael Jordan. He just wanted quiet. Then it happened, a sound. Barely noticeable, a soft whimper. At first, his mind tried to ignore it. Cities make noise. Wind moves trash, metal creaks. You learn to tune things out, but the sound came again, short, weak, almost apologetic. Jordan stopped walking. That pause, so small it could have been missed, was the first crack in what would become an incredible story. He listened. There it was again. A cry not loud enough to demand attention, but desperate enough to ask for it. Most people would have kept moving. Most people do. Jordan didn't. He turned toward the sound, eyes scanning the shadows near a line of bushes at the edge of the parking lot. The light barely reached there. It was the kind of place things hid, things forgotten, ignored, or abandoned. He stepped closer, another whimper, this time closer, and suddenly he saw movement. A shape shifted behind the bushes. Low to the ground, slow, careful, as if whatever it was had learned that being seen wasn't always safe. Jordan crouched instinctively, and that's when he saw him, a dog, not just any dog, a stray, thin. Too thin, fur-matted and dirty, ribs faintly visible under skin that had seen too many hungry days. One ear bent unnaturally, like it had healed wrong after an old injury. The other carried scars, marks that didn't come from nature alone. Its legs trembled, not from the cold, but from fear. And yet, the eyes, that's what stopped Jordan. The dog's eyes weren't wild. They weren't aggressive. They weren't angry. They were tired. The kind of tired that comes from surviving too long without help. For a moment, neither of them moved. The dog froze, ready to run. Jordan stayed still, knowing that sudden movement could send it bolting into the darkness. Time slowed. The city faded. It was just a man and an animal locked in a quiet standoff beneath a flickering streetlight. Jordan could have walked away. No one would have known. No one would have blamed him. But something inside him refused to let his feet move. Because in that dog's eyes, he saw something familiar. Not weakness. Resilience. The kind he recognized from his own past. Before the championships. Before the fame. Before the world believed in him. Back when he was just a kid being told he wasn't good enough. Jordan stayed crouched and spoke softly. Not because the dog could understand his words, but because tone matters. Presence matters. Hey, it's okay. The dog flinched. Years of survival had taught it one lesson above all else. Humans are unpredictable. The dog backed away slightly, nails scraping the pavement, body low, ready to disappear if needed. Jordan didn't follow. That was important. He stayed where he was. Sometimes trust isn't built by moving closer, but by choosing not to. The silence stretched again. Wind rustled the leaves. A car passed far away, its sound fading quickly. The dog's breathing was shallow. Jordan noticed every detail, the rise and fall of its chest, the way its tail stayed tucked tightly, the way its eyes never left his hands. He slowly extended one hand, not reaching forward, just placing it where the dog could see it. Open palm, no threat, Seconds passed, then another. Then the dog took one step forward, just one. Then it stopped. Jordan didn't smile, didn't move, didn't speak. Another step. The dog sniffed the air, then his hand. Its nose brushed his fingers, quickly, nervously, and in that instant, something shifted. The dog didn't run. It stayed. That was the moment Jordan would later think about the most. Not the sight of the dog, not the sadness, but the decision the dog made. After everything it had been through, it chose to trust again. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't helping. It's letting yourself be helped. Jordan gently scratched behind the dog's ear. The dog tensed, then slowly relaxed. Its tail gave the smallest movement, not a wag, more like a question. Jordan exhaled. He hadn't realized he was holding his breath. This wasn't a publicity moment. This wasn't charity. This wasn't an obligation. This was instinct. And instinct was telling him one thing clearly. Walking away was no longer an option. As he stood up slowly, the dog watched him carefully, ready to react. Jordan took a step back instead, giving space. That's when he noticed something else. The dog was limping, barely, but enough to matter. Jordan glanced down the empty street, then back at the dog. All right. He murmured softly, "We'll figure this out." He reached for his phone. Not to call security, not to call an assistant, but to call for help. Because some nights don't announce themselves as important. They arrive quietly. They test you silently, and they ask a simple question: will you stop? Or will you keep walking? That night, Michael Jordan stopped, and nothing was ever the same again. The world had already decided this dog didn't matter. That was the truth. Quiet, uncomfortable, and easy to ignore. He didn't have a name. He didn't have a home. And to most people, he didn't even exist. Long before Michael Jordan heard that whimper, the dog had learned the rules of the street. Rules written by hunger, cold nights, and disappointment. Rule 1, stay invisible. Rule 2, don't trust kindness. Rule 3, survive, no matter how. Every scar on his body was a sentence in a story no one ever read. The crooked ear wasn't an accident. It was the result of something that happened when he was too small to defend himself. The limp in his step wasn't new. It had become part of who he was. A reminder that pain, when ignored long enough, becomes normal. Pain doesn't disappear when it's unseen. It just becomes silent. The dog had been wandering this area for weeks. Maybe longer. No one could say for sure. Strays don't keep calendars. They measure time in meals missed and nights survived. The parking lot was one of his safer places. Not safe, but safer. There were bushes to hide in, shadows to disappear into, and occasionally, if luck was on his side, leftovers dropped by careless hands. Luck, however, was rare. Most nights, the dog slept light, ears twitching at every sound. Engines meant danger, footsteps meant risk, even kindness could be a trap. He had learned that the hard way. Once, someone had called him over with food, then laughed when he flinched. Another time, a door opened suddenly, sending him running into traffic, barely escaping with his life. After that, he stopped believing in good intentions. When survival is your teacher, fear becomes your best student. That night, the cold settled in early. The kind of cold that sinks into the ground and crawls upward. The dog's stomach ached, not sharply but constantly. Hunger had become a dull companion that never left. He had found nothing to eat that day, no scraps, no kindness, no luck, so he curled himself behind the bushes, pressing close to the earth, trying to make himself small. His body shook, not just from cold but from exhaustion. That's when he heard footsteps, slow, steady, different. The dog's heart began to race. Instinct screamed at him to run, but his body hesitated. Running cost energy, and energy was something he didn't have much of left. He lifted his head just enough to look. A tall figure stood nearby, not rushing, not aggressive, just present. The dog froze. Sometimes fear isn't loud. It's waiting to see what happens next. He had seen humans like this before, humans who noticed him just long enough to decide he wasn't worth the effort. He expected the same now. But this one stopped. The man crouched. That was unusual. Most humans stood tall, looming, intimidating. This one lowered himself, making his body smaller instead of bigger. Still, the dog didn't trust it. Trust had nearly killed him before. The dog shifted his weight, ready to bolt. His limp reminded him he couldn't run far or fast. If this went wrong, he had no backup plan. Fear feels different when escape isn't guaranteed. The man spoke softly. The words themselves didn't matter. Dogs don't understand language the way humans do. But the tone did. Calm, slow, no sharp edges. The dog flinched anyway. Old habits don't die easily. He backed up, pressing against the bush, thorns poking his side. He didn't yelp. Pain was nothing new. What was new was the patience. The man didn't follow. He didn't chase. He didn't shout. He didn't reach suddenly. He stayed where he was. That confused the dog. Most humans tried to control situations. This one seemed to be waiting. Sometimes kindness looks like restraint. The dog watched the man's hands carefully. Hands were dangerous. Hands grabbed. Hands hurt. But these hands stayed open, still, non-threatening. The dog's breathing slowed slightly, just slightly. Curiosity began to fight fear. He leaned forward a fraction, sniffing the air. The man smelled like leather, clean clothes, and something else. Something calm, not desperation, not hunger, stability. The dog took one small step forward, then another. Each movement felt like a risk. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to be careful. When his nose finally brushed the man's fingers, he expected pain. It didn't come. Sometimes the absence of pain is the beginning of hope. The touch was gentle, careful, almost unsure. The dog stiffened, then slowly relaxed as the scratching moved behind his ear, right where he couldn't reach himself. A low sound escaped his chest before he could stop it. Not a bark, not a growl, a sigh. He hadn't sighed like that in a long time. That was when the man noticed the limp more clearly. His eyes followed the dog's movement, scanning, not with judgment, but with concern. The dog caught that look, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a problem. He felt seen. Being seen doesn't fix everything, but it changes everything. The dog shifted closer without realizing it. His tail twitched once, unsure, like it didn't remember how to move freely anymore. The man didn't celebrate the progress, didn't push it further. He simply stayed. Minutes passed. The dog sat down. That small action said everything. Sitting meant trust. Sitting meant choosing not to run. The dog had made his decision. He didn't know this man's name. He didn't know what would happen next. But he knew one thing. This man was different. The man stood slowly. The dog's muscles tensed. But the man stepped back instead of forward. Another unexpected move. Trust grows when expectations are broken in the right way. The man reached for his phone. The dog watched closely, heart pounding again. Sudden movements had always meant danger, but nothing bad happened. The man spoke into the phone quietly, glancing down at the dog as if asking permission with his eyes. The dog didn't move. When the man hung up, he knelt again. "Hey," he said softly, "you're okay." The words didn't matter. The promise did. The dog lowered his head onto his paws. A gesture of surrender. A gesture of hope. Around them, the city continued as if nothing special was happening. Cars passed. Lights flickered. Life moved on, but for this dog, everything had changed. He was no longer invisible. He was no longer alone. And he had no idea that the man kneeling in front of him was one of the most famous athletes in the world. To him, this man wasn't a legend. He was just the first person who didn't walk away. Sometimes the most powerful rescues don't begin with being saved, but with finally being noticed. Trust doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush in with confidence. Trust arrives quietly, and only when it feels safe. In that dim corner of the parking lot, under a streetlight that flickered like it might give up at any moment, something fragile was forming between a man and a dog. Something far more delicate than fear. The dog had stopped shaking, not completely, but enough to notice. His body was still tense, muscles coiled from years of survival, but the panic had softened. He wasn't ready to believe in kindness. He was simply willing to pause. And sometimes that pause is everything. Healing doesn't begin with belief, it begins with hesitation. Michael Jordan remained crouched, his weight balanced on his heels, breathing slow and steady. He understood pressure. He understood what it meant to be watched, judged, expected to react. Right now, he chose not to. The dog studied him closely. Dogs are experts at reading energy. They don't care about words, they care about intent. And this man's intent felt different. No impatience, no frustration, no demand, just presence. Jordan noticed how the dog's eyes tracked every movement of his hands. The dog wasn't relaxed. He was evaluating, measuring, calculating risk. That awareness hit Jordan harder than he expected. This dog had lived in a world where mistakes cost you safety. When fear is learned, trust must be earned slowly. Jordan shifted slightly to ease the pressure on his knees. The movement was small, but the dog noticed instantly, head lifting, body stiffening. Jordan froze. He had learned this instinctively, on courts, in locker rooms, in moments where control mattered. Sometimes, the smartest move is to stop. The dog relaxed again. A lesson passed silently between them. Minutes stretched, not awkward, not tense, sacred. Jordan glanced around. The parking lot was empty. No witnesses, no audience, just the sound of distant traffic and the faint hum of the streetlight overhead. The dog took another step forward, then another. Each step was a negotiation with memory. Memory of hunger, memory of pain, memory of humans who offered something and took more. Jordan let his hand rest on the ground now, palm down, fingers relaxed. Lower, less threatening, the dog sniffed again. Closer this time, his nose lingered, his breathing slowed. Jordan felt the warmth of the dog's breath against his skin. The smallest signs of calm can feel like miracles when fear has been constant. The dog's tail moved just once, a half motion like the muscle remembered something the mind had forgotten. Jordan smiled without realizing it. He didn't touch the dog this time, he waited. Because trust, he knew, isn't taken, it's given. The dog surprised them both. He leaned forward and pressed his head gently against Jordan's knee. Not hard, not confident, but intentional. Jordan's chest tightened. That single motion carried more meaning than applause ever could. Sometimes trust doesn't speak, it leans in. Jordan slowly, carefully, placed his hand on the dog's back. The fur was rough, patchy in places. Underneath, he could feel bone. Too much bone. The dog flinched, just a little, but didn't pull away. Jordan stopped again, paused, waited. The dog exhaled. That was permission. Jordan began to stroke the dog's back in slow, predictable movements. No surprises, no pressure. The dog's body responded almost against its will. Muscles softened, weight shifted. He sat down fully now, right beside Jordan, close enough to feel body heat. For the first time in a long time, the dog wasn't bracing for impact. Safety feels like warmth when you've lived in the cold too long. Jordan noticed the dog's breathing even out, not relaxed but steady. He glanced at the dog's leg again. The limp was more pronounced when the dog adjusted his position. There was pain there, old pain, the kind that becomes part of your identity. Jordan felt something rise in him, something familiar, anger, not at the dog, at the world that had allowed this, at the indifference that leaves scars. Some wounds aren't caused by cruelty, but by neglect. Jordan reached slowly into his jacket pocket. The dog stiffened again, eyes locking onto the movement. Jordan stopped halfway. He withdrew his hand, showing it empty. The dog watched, then relaxed. Jordan let out a breath. Even kindness had to be explained here. He pulled his phone out slowly, holding it up where the dog could see. The screen lit up softly. The dog didn't react. Jordan dialed a number. As the phone rang, Jordan kept his other hand resting lightly on the ground, not touching the dog, but close enough to maintain connection. When someone answered, Jordan spoke quietly. "Yes," he said. "I found a dog. He's injured. He needs help." Pause. "Yes, I can bring him." Jordan hung up and turned his attention back to the dog. The dog looked up at him, and for a moment their eyes met, not fear to dominance, not desperation to power, but recognition. Connection doesn't need words. It needs honesty. Jordan shifted his weight and slowly stood. The dog reacted immediately, jumping to his feet, anxiety flaring again. Jordan raised his hand slightly. Calm, reassuring, "It's okay," he murmured. The dog didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. Jordan took a step back. The dog followed, one step, then another. Jordan stopped. The dog stopped too. They were mirroring each other now. A silent dance of trust. Trust becomes real when movement is shared. Jordan turned toward his car. The dog hesitated, glancing back at the bushes. His shelter, his familiar. Jordan noticed. He didn't pull, he didn't force, he waited. The dog looked back at Jordan, then at the bushes again, then, slowly, he turned and took a step toward the car, leaving behind the only home he had known. Letting go of survival is the hardest step toward living. At the car, Jordan opened the door slowly. The interior light came on, bright but warm. The dog froze. Cars had never meant safety before. Jordan stepped aside, giving space. He tapped the seat gently. No pressure, just invitation. The dog leaned forward, sniffed the air inside the car. New smells, unknown territory, fear surged. Then something else rose with it. Hope. The dog placed one paw on the seat. Then two. Then, after one last glance at Jordan, he climbed inside. Jordan closed the door gently. No slam, no sudden noise. The dog curled up on the seat, unsure, watching Jordan carefully through the window. Jordan walked around to the driver's side, heart heavier and lighter at the same time. As he sat behind the wheel, he looked over. The dog was still watching him. Jordan smiled. "All right," he said softly. "We're doing this." Trust doesn't mean knowing the outcome, it means choosing to move forward anyway. And with that, the engine started, not just a car, a new chapter. Some journeys are short in distance, but endless in meaning. The engine turned over softly, breaking the silence of the parking lot. The sound was gentle, almost apologetic, as if the car itself understood that something delicate was happening inside. The dog flinched, not violently, but noticeably. Jordan noticed immediately. When fear has been your companion, even quiet sounds feel loud. Jordan rested his hands on the steering wheel but didn't pull out right away. He let the car idle, allowing the dog time to adjust. The interior light faded, replaced by the soft glow of the dashboard. The dog shifted on the passenger seat, unsure of what to do with something as simple as comfort. The seat was warm. Strange, the smell was unfamiliar but clean, nothing sharp, nothing threatening. Still, his eyes stayed locked on Jordan, watching, reading, preparing. Jordan turned slightly toward him, careful not to stare. "It's okay," he said quietly. "We're just going to get you some help." The words didn't matter, the calm did. Jordan eased the car into motion. Tires rolled slowly over the pavement, each sound echoing louder inside the dog's head than it did outside. The dog tensed again, paws digging into the seat. Jordan slowed even more. Kindness isn't just what you do, it's how carefully you do it. As they pulled onto the road, streetlights passed overhead in steady rhythm. Light, shadow, light, shadow. The dog's head followed each flash, eyes wide, body rigid. Jordan noticed the limp again when the dog shifted position. Pain forced him to settle awkwardly, favoring one side. Jordan felt a tightening in his chest. This wasn't just a stray, this was a survivor. Survival leaves marks long after danger is gone. The city moved quietly around them. Late, night traffic hummed at a distance. Neon signs flickered, indifferent to the small miracle unfolding inside the car. Jordan drove with both hands on the wheel, slower than usual. No sudden stops, no sharp turns. Every movement was intentional. The dog's breathing was shallow at first, quick, uneven. But slowly, minute by minute, it began to change. Inhale, exhale, still cautious, still alert, but no longer panicked. Jordan glanced over at a red light. The dog met his eyes. There was something new there, not trust yet, But curiosity is fear's first step backward. The light turned green, the car moved again. Jordan broke the silence, not with conversation but with presence. He hummed softly, an unconscious habit, something low and steady without melody. The dog tilted his head. Sound without threat, sound without chaos. His ears relaxed slightly. Jordan continued humming, not louder, not for effect, just consistent. Consistency is what fear understands first. As the road stretched ahead, the dog lowered his head onto the seat. Not fully resting, just enough to release some tension. Jordan noticed. He didn't react. He let the moment stay small. Outside, the city lights thinned. The buildings gave way to quieter streets. The dog's eyes fluttered, then snapped open again. Sleep felt dangerous. Jordan understood that too. Rest is hard when survival has taught you to stay awake. The car passed a gas station. The smell of food drifted faintly through the vents. The dog's nose twitched. His stomach tightened painfully, reminding him of how long it had been since his last real meal. Jordan noticed the reaction. He adjusted the vents and made a mental note. Soon, the dog shifted again, curling slightly inward, protecting his belly. A posture learned from too many nights outside. Jordan glanced over again. This dog wasn't just injured, he was guarded. The body remembers what the mind wants to forget. As they drove, Jordan's thoughts drifted. Not to trophies or games, but to moments long before fame. Long nights, long drives, times when uncertainty was the only constant. He looked at the dog and felt a strange sense of recognition. Different worlds, same feeling, the feeling of not knowing what comes next, and moving forward anyway. Sometimes we recognize ourselves in the most unexpected places. The dog lifted his head again as the car slowed near a quiet intersection. Jordan's phone buzzed softly with a message, confirmation from the animal clinic. Jordan silenced it immediately. Nothing was more important than keeping the calm. The dog watched the movement carefully, then relaxed when nothing bad followed. Another small victory. Jordan turned onto a side street leading toward the clinic. The building was still a few minutes away. The dog shifted closer to the center console. Subtle, almost accidental. Jordan felt it, didn't acknowledge it. Safety makes itself known in small, unspoken ways. The dog's breathing deepened now. His head rested fully on the seat. His eyes closed for half a second, then another, then longer. He wasn't asleep, but he was trying. Jordan slowed even more. The road stretched ahead, empty and quiet. This ride, 10 minutes, maybe less, felt heavier than any road Jordan had ever traveled. Because this wasn't about getting somewhere. It was about carrying someone else's fear without dropping it. Responsibility feels different when it breathes beside you. As the clinic came into view, the building glowed softly against the dark street. Clean, bright, safe. The dog noticed the change in light immediately. His eyes opened fully. His body tensed again. Jordan parked and turned off the engine. Silence returned. Jordan didn't move. He waited. The dog looked at him, question in his eyes. Jordan met his gaze. "We're here," he said gently. "New places are frightening when you don't know if you're staying or being left." Jordan opened his door slowly and stepped out. The dog watched through the window, heart racing again. Jordan walked around to the passenger side and opened the door carefully. Cool night air rushed in. The dog hesitated. Jordan crouched, bringing himself to eye level. "It's okay," he murmured again, not promising outcomes, just presence. The dog sniffed the air. The smell of disinfectant drifted from inside the clinic. Sharp, unfamiliar. Fear surged. Jordan stayed still. The dog placed one paw on the edge of the seat, then paused. Every step forward argues with every memory behind you. Jordan extended his hand, not touching, just offering direction. The dog stepped down slowly, favoring his injured leg. The ground felt cold, unfamiliar, but Jordan was right there. The dog stayed close to his side, not touching, but near enough to feel warmth. Together, they walked toward the clinic door. For the first time, the dog didn't feel like he was being taken somewhere. He felt like he was being led. Sometimes the ride doesn't just take you to safety. It teaches you what safety feels like. And as the clinic door opened, bright light spilling onto the sidewalk, the dog crossed a threshold far greater than any doorway. He was no longer alone. The brightest rooms often reveal the darkest truths. As the clinic door closed behind them, the quiet hum of the street vanished. In its place came a new world, one filled with white walls, sharp lights, and the faint smell of antiseptic. The dog froze. His body stiffened instantly, muscles locking as if expecting something bad to happen. Fear reacts faster than logic ever can. Jordan felt it immediately. The dog stayed close to his leg, not touching, but close enough to borrow courage. The bright lights reflected in the dog's eyes, widening them. His breathing quickened. New place, new smells, new risks. Jordan knelt beside him, lowering himself again. Not as a protector, not as an owner, but as a steady presence. "It's okay," he said softly. The words didn't erase fear, but they slowed it. A technician stepped out from behind the desk. Her movements were calm, professional, but the dog didn't know that. He took a step back, nails clicking on the tile. Jordan raised one hand gently. "He's scared," Jordan said quietly. The technician nodded. "We'll go slow. Real care begins when fear is acknowledged, not ignored." They were guided into a small examination room. The door closed softly. The space was clean, contained, safe, but to the dog it felt like a trap. He scanned every corner, every surface, looking for exits. Jordan stayed seated on the floor. That choice mattered. The dog noticed. He settled beside Jordan, pressing his body lightly against Jordan's leg. Jordan didn't move. Sometimes reassurance is just staying exactly where you are. The veterinarian entered moments later. Calm voice, slow steps, experienced eyes. She crouched too. Another surprise. She didn't reach for the dog. She spoke to Jordan. "How long has he been like this?" "I just found him tonight," Jordan replied. "But he's been through a lot." The vet nodded, her eyes scanning the dog, not judging, not pitying, assessing. "We'll take it one step at a time. Healing starts with patience, not procedures." The vet began the examination slowly. First, just watching how the dog stood, how he shifted his weight, how his tail stayed low but still. The limp became obvious. Jordan's jaw tightened as the vet gently felt along the dog's leg. The dog flinched but didn't snap. Pain surged, but so did trust. He looked back at Jordan. Jordan met his eyes, easy. Jordan murmured, "Pain feels different when someone stays with you through it." The vet paused often, letting the dog breathe, letting fear settle before continuing. When she checked his ribs, her expression changed slightly. Not dramatic, but concerned. "He's severely underweight," she said quietly. "He hasn't eaten properly in a long time." Jordan nodded. He already knew, but hearing it out loud made it heavier. The vet checked the dog's ears, the scars, the teeth, worn, chipped. Each finding added another piece to the story the dog couldn't tell. The body keeps records when words are impossible. The vet straightened slowly. "This didn't happen overnight," she said. "This is long-term neglect, possibly abuse." The word hung in the air. Abuse. Jordan's hands curled slightly into fists. Not anger control. The vet continued gently. "Some injuries are old, some healed incorrectly. He's learned to expect pain." Jordan looked down at the dog. The dog didn't look back. He stared at the floor. "Some wounds teach silence instead of scars." The vet explained the treatment plan carefully. "Blood work, X-rays, fluids, nutrition, rest. He's going to need time," she said, "and consistency." Jordan didn't hesitate. "Do whatever he needs," he said. No pause, no question. The vet nodded. "We'll take good care of him." Jordan stayed as the dog was gently lifted onto the table. The dog panicked briefly, legs scrambling, fear flashing again. Jordan stepped closer, placed a hand on his back. The dog froze, then relaxed. Familiar presence can quiet even the loudest fear. As fluids were administered, the dog whimpered softly, not from pain, but confusion. Jordan stayed beside him, speaking quietly, repeating the same calm tone. The dog's breathing slowed again. Minutes passed, then more. Eventually, the dog's body sagged, not with fear but exhaustion. The vet wrapped him in a warm blanket. For the first time that night, the dog closed his eyes completely. Jordan exhaled. He hadn't realized how tense he'd been. Relief often arrives quietly, after fear has spent itself. The vet stepped aside and spoke to Jordan privately. "He's strong," she said. "Stronger than he looks. He's survived things most wouldn't." Jordan nodded. "Will he be okay?" Jordan asked. The vet smiled softly. "Yes," she said, "with care, with patience, with someone who doesn't give up on him." Jordan looked back at the dog, curled in the blanket, breathing evenly. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. The vet paused, then nodded. Commitment is the most powerful medicine. Jordan stayed while tests were run. He didn't check his phone. He didn't leave the room. The dog stirred occasionally, eyes fluttering open, checking. Jordan was still there. Each time the dog relaxed again, trust deepened, not dramatically but steadily. The vet returned with results. No immediate life threatening issues, she said, but he's been hurting for a long time. Jordan swallowed. The dog shifted slightly in his sleep. Jordan reached out and gently adjusted the blanket. A simple act, a powerful one. Care doesn't have to be loud to be life-changing. When the vet asked about next steps, shelter placement, temporary care, Jordan interrupted gently. "I'll take him," he said. The vet blinked. "You're sure?" Jordan nodded. "Yes." No speech, no explanation, just certainty. Sometimes the biggest decisions are the quietest ones. The vet smiled. "Genuinely?" "He's lucky," she said. Jordan shook his head slightly. "No," he replied. "I am." The dog stirred again, eyes opening just enough to see Jordan standing there. He didn't know what had been decided. He didn't know his future. But he knew one thing: this man hadn't left, and for now, that was enough. Before healing can begin, someone has to choose not to walk away. Every rescue has a moment where the real work begins, not in the dramatic night. Not in the emotional decision, but in the quiet days that follow. The clinic doors opened again, and this time the dog wasn't stepping into uncertainty. He was stepping into something unfamiliar: stability. Jordan carried him gently, careful not to strain the injured leg. The dog didn't resist. He didn't struggle. He simply allowed it. That alone said everything. Trust doesn't always look like confidence. Sometimes it looks like surrender. The night air felt different now, still cold, but less threatening. The dog was wrapped in a blanket, his body warm, his breathing slow. His eyes stayed half open, watching, learning. Jordan placed him carefully into the car, adjusting the seat so the dog could stretch without pain. He took his time, no rush, no urgency. This wasn't an emergency anymore. This was a beginning. Beginnings aren't loud, they're careful. The drive home was quieter than before. No fear, filled tension, no rigid posture. The dog rested his head against the seat, eyes drifting closed for seconds at a time. Jordan noticed every change: the slight relaxation of the shoulders, the slower breathing, the way the dog didn't flinch at every sound anymore. Healing had already started, not in the body, in the mind. The mind heals first when safety is real. Jordan pulled into his driveway and turned off the engine. Silence filled the car. The dog stirred but didn't panic. He stayed where he was, blinking slowly. Jordan smiled. "Home," he said softly. The word didn't mean anything to the dog yet, but it would. Jordan lifted him carefully again and carried him inside. The house lights were low, warm, not harsh. The air smelled clean, calm, familiar. The dog's nose twitched. New smells, no danger. Jordan set him down on a soft blanket he'd placed on the floor ahead of time. The dog hesitated, then lay down, slowly, carefully. No hiding, no curling into a defensive ball, just lying down. The body rests when it finally believes it's allowed to. Jordan sat nearby, not crowding, not hovering, just close enough to matter. Minutes passed. Then more. The dog didn't move. He slept, not lightly, not nervously, deep. Jordan watched him, chest rising and falling steadily, the blanket rising and falling with it. Jordan hadn't realized how heavy his own shoulders felt until they finally relaxed. Sometimes rescuing someone else rescues parts of you too. The first morning came quietly. Sunlight slipped through the windows, soft and golden. The dog stirred slowly, lifting his head as if unsure where he was. Panic flickered for a moment, then he saw Jordan. The panic faded. Safety feels familiar when it stays. Jordan crouched and spoke gently, "Good morning." The dog didn't move toward him, but he didn't move away either. Progress? Jordan brought water first, placed it nearby, stepped back. The dog sniffed cautiously, then drank. Slowly, carefully. Jordan offered food next. Simple, soft, easy on a weak stomach. The dog hesitated. Jordan waited. Healing can't be rushed. It has its own pace. The dog ate quietly, no guarding, no urgency, just steady bites. Jordan watched, heart heavy and light at the same time. This wasn't about saving anymore. This was about rebuilding. Day one passed slowly. No expectations, no pressure. The dog explored cautiously. One room at a time, he flinched at a closing door, froze at sudden sounds, but each time Jordan stayed calm. No shouting, no punishment, no demands, only consistency. Consistency is kindness that repeats itself. Night fell again. The dog hesitated before sleeping, glancing around unsure. Jordan placed another blanket beside the couch and sat down, turning on a lamp instead of overhead lights. Soft, predictable, the dog lay down closer than before. Jordan didn't move. Trust grows in the space between effort and patience. Days turned into a routine. Morning walks short, slow, careful, meals regular, measured, reliable. Rest encouraged, uninterrupted. The dog still startled sometimes, still limped, still watched hands carefully, but the fear began to loosen its grip. He started wagging his tail, hesitant at first, then stronger. Jordan noticed everything. Small changes mean everything when recovery begins. One afternoon, Jordan sat on the floor tying his shoe. The dog approached without being called and sat beside him, close. Comfortable, Jordan paused. This was new. He reached out slowly. The dog leaned in, not away. The moment trust becomes choice, not accident. That was the day Jordan gave him a name, Chance, because that's what this was. Not a rescue story, not a miracle, a chance for healing, for life, for something better. The name seemed to fit. Chance responded to it, tilting his head, ears lifting, tail wagging just a little faster. Jordan smiled. From that day on, Chance followed him everywhere, not out of fear, but loyalty. He slept nearby, watched Jordan move through rooms, waited patiently. Jordan noticed himself slowing down too. Longer walks, more quiet moments, less noise. Sometimes healing changes both sides of the leash. Chance's limp improved gradually with care and treatment. His coat grew thicker, his eyes brighter, but the biggest change wasn't physical. It was trust. One night, a loud noise echoed outside. Chance startled, but instead of hiding, he ran to Jordan. Jordan placed a hand on his back. Chance stayed. Trust means knowing where safety lies. Weeks passed, then months. Chance no longer slept lightly. He stretched out fully, unafraid to take space. He greeted mornings with excitement instead of caution. Jordan watched it all quietly. He never told the story publicly. He didn't need to, because every day Chance told it for him, through wagging tails, calm eyes, and steady presence. The best stories don't need to be told. They need to be lived. One evening, as the sun set and the house filled with warm light, Chance rested his head on Jordan's foot. Not asking, not needing, just being there, Jordan looked down and smiled. This wasn't about adopting a dog. This was about choosing not to walk away. Again and again, every single day. A new beginning isn't a single moment. It's a decision you keep making. Not all healing is visible. Some of it happens quietly, inside places no one applauds. As the weeks passed, Chance changed in ways that were easy to notice. His coat grew thicker, his eyes brighter, his limp softened with care and patience. But there was another transformation happening, one that didn't show up in mirrors or vet reports. It showed up in the mornings. Jordan began waking earlier, not because he had to, but because Chance was already awake, sitting calmly by the bed, tail tapping gently against the floor. No barking, no demand, just presence. Sometimes love doesn't wake you. It waits for you. Jordan noticed how his days were slowing down. For most of his life, everything had been about motion, speed, urgency. Winning, now, walks were unhurried. Conversations were quieter. Silence wasn't something to fill, it was something to keep. Chance walked beside him, not pulling ahead, not lagging behind, just matching pace. Jordan found himself matching too. Healing often begins when someone teaches you how to slow down. They developed routines without discussing them. Morning walks at the same time, meals at the same hour, evening rest in the same corner of the room. Predictability became comfort. For Chance, routine meant safety. For Jordan, it meant peace. The house felt different now, fuller, warmer, not because of noise, but because of meaning. A home doesn't need to be loud to feel alive. Friends noticed it first. You seem calmer, one said casually. Jordan shrugged. I am. They noticed Chance too. The way he stayed close, the way he watched Jordan with quiet loyalty, the way he responded to his name like it meant something sacred. Chance didn't jump on people, didn't beg for attention, he observed. Jordan recognized that behavior. That was a survivor's habit. Survivors don't seek attention, they measure it. One afternoon, Jordan sat on the porch steps, staring out at nothing in particular. Chance lay beside him, head resting on Jordan's knee. Jordan's thoughts drifted, not to regrets, not to past glories, but to moments in between, the years when expectations were louder than joy, when success didn't always feel like fulfillment. Chance shifted, sensing the change in Jordan's breathing. Jordan placed a hand on Chance's head, steady, grounding. Sometimes comfort doesn't come from answers, but from contact. Chance had learned Jordan's moods, learned when to give space, learned when to lean in, learned when silence was needed more than reassurance. That kind of understanding doesn't come from training, it comes from trust. Jordan noticed that Chance never flinched around him anymore. Loud noises still startled him, but he always ran toward Jordan, never away. That mattered. Trust means knowing where to go when fear returns. Jordan began talking more on walks, not to Chance but around him. Thoughts spoken aloud without audience or judgment. Chance listened, not with understanding but with attention. Jordan found comfort in that. No advice, no expectations, just presence. Some of the best listeners never interrupt. There were moments, quiet ones, when Jordan realized something surprising. Chance wasn't just healing, he was teaching Jordan how to be still, how to listen, how to exist without proving anything. For the first time in years, Jordan felt no pressure to perform, no spotlight, no score to keep. Peace arrives when performance steps aside. Chance had his setbacks, bad days when old fears resurfaced, nights when storms triggered anxiety, moments when a raised voice on television made him retreat to the corner. Jordan never scolded him. He adjusted, turned the volume down, sat closer, spoke softly. Each response told Chance the same thing: you're safe. Reassurance works best when it's consistent. Jordan began supporting animal rescue organizations quietly, not because of Chance, but because of what Chance revealed. How many others were still invisible, how many were waiting for someone to stop. Jordan didn't announce donations, didn't attach his name to campaigns, he just helped, because that's what someone once did for Chance. True impact doesn't need recognition, it needs repetition. Chance's personality began to emerge fully. He loved mornings, sunlight, long naps in warm spots, gentle scratches behind the ear. He wasn't loud. He wasn't demanding, he was grateful. Jordan noticed how Chance always waited before eating, looking up first, as if asking permission. Jordan knelt beside him one day and said gently, "It's okay." Chance ate. Sometimes permission is the last thing fear needs. One evening, Jordan invited a friend over. Chance watched from a distance, alert but calm. The friend reached out instinctively. Chance froze. Jordan intervened gently. "Give him a second." The friend stepped back. Chance relaxed. That moment mattered. Advocacy is protecting someone's boundaries, even when they can't explain them. Jordan realized then that he wasn't just a companion. He was a guardian. Chance trusted him to read the room, to keep him safe, to choose for him when fear made choices hard. That responsibility grounded Jordan. It reminded him that leadership wasn't about control. It was about care. Leadership is quiet when it's done right. Late one night, Jordan sat watching a replay of an old game. The crowd roared on screen. The moment froze at a winning shot. Chance lay beside him asleep. Jordan muted the TV. The silence felt better. He looked down at Chance and smiled. The trophies were still there, the legacy unchanged, but something else had been added: connection. Legacy grows when life does. Chance shifted in his sleep, paw resting on Jordan's foot. Jordan didn't move. This right here felt complete. No expectations, no applause, just shared stillness. Healing doesn't always feel dramatic. It feels settled. Jordan understood now that saving Chance wasn't a single heroic act. It was 1,000 small ones, choosing patience, choosing gentleness, choosing to stay, and in return, Chance gave him something priceless. Presence without judgment, loyalty without condition, love without demand. Sometimes healing goes both ways, and neither side ever forgets it. Some stories don't want to be told. They escape quietly, through whispers, not headlines. Michael Jordan never planned to share what happened. In his mind, it wasn't a story. It was just a choice, a private one, the kind that didn't need an audience. But stories have a way of finding daylight. The truth doesn't ask permission before it travels. It started small. A vet technician mentioned it casually to a friend. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet moment of disbelief. "You won't believe who stayed all night with a stray dog," she said. No photos, no names, just a feeling. The friend told someone else. Someone who told someone else. The details blurred, but the core remained intact. A famous man, a wounded dog, and a decision made without cameras. Real stories grow because they're true, not because they're loud. Soon, a neighbor noticed something unusual. Michael Jordan, walking a dog, not a show dog, not a purebred, not a carefully groomed companion. A rescue, slow walks, early mornings, no entourage, just him and Chance. The neighbor didn't approach, didn't take pictures, just watched and wondered. The most surprising moments are the ones that feel normal. A quiet post appeared online days later. No accusations, no hype, just words. "I think Michael Jordan adopted a stray dog. I see him walking it every morning. No cameras, no attention." It didn't go viral right away. It simmered, then someone commented, "I heard something similar from a clinic employee." Another replied, "My cousin works there. Same story." When stories align, they stop sounding like rumors. Within days, the internet began doing what it always does, connecting dots. Speculating, filling gaps, but something was different this time. No outrage, no scandal, no demands, just surprise. People expected larger than life behavior from Michael Jordan, grand gestures, big announcements. This was quiet, and that made it powerful. Silence hits harder when people expect noise. Articles began appearing, not from tabloids, but from smaller outlets. The tone was respectful, curious, almost careful. Michael Jordan reportedly adopts a stray dog. Reportedly, no photos of the rescue, no staged interviews, just second-hand accounts. Jordan said nothing. He didn't confirm, he didn't deny. He kept walking Chance every morning. When you don't explain yourself, your actions speak longer. Fans reacted in an unexpected way. They didn't debate stats. They didn't argue greatness. They shared stories. Stories of dogs they'd rescued. Stories of moments when someone helped them quietly. Stories of compassion without applause. The comments weren't loud. They were personal. Kindness invites reflection, not argument. One comment stood out and was shared thousands of times. "He didn't save a dog. He showed us who he really is." Another read, "This makes me respect him more than any championship." Jordan never read them, but Chance felt the change. People began smiling on walks, nodding, keeping distance, but acknowledging. Chance didn't understand fame. He understood tone, and the tone around them was warm. Animals don't recognize celebrities, but they recognize safety. One morning, a stranger called out softly from across the street, "Hey, beautiful dog." Jordan nodded. Chance wagged his tail. That was enough. Jordan remained careful. He didn't let the story turn into spectacle. No photos, no interviews. This wasn't content. This was life. Not every meaningful moment belongs to the internet. Still, the story grew, not because Jordan fed it, but because people needed it. The world was tired of headlines built on ego, outrage, and noise. This story was different. It reminded people that greatness could look gentle, that legends could kneel, that power could choose patience. Sometimes inspiration arrives quietly when people are desperate for hope. A reporter eventually reached out through official channels, a polite request. Respectful tone, Jordan declined, no explanation, just no, and somehow that made the story stronger. Refusing the spotlight can become the spotlight. Chance remained the same through it all, still cautious with strangers, still loyal, still gentle. Jordan noticed how Chance always stayed slightly behind him now, not hiding but trusting Jordan to lead. The bond was obvious, even from a distance. Connection doesn't hide. It simply doesn't perform. Weeks later, Jordan was asked at a charity event off camera about the dog. He smiled. "That's my guy," he said simply, nothing more, no story, no lesson, just ownership. The most honest answers are the shortest ones. The event moved on, the moment passed, but for the people who heard it, it stuck. Because that one sentence carried everything: responsibility, pride, care. Jordan didn't need to say he adopted Chance. He lived it. Commitment doesn't need explanation, it needs consistency. The story eventually reached animal rescue communities, volunteers, foster families, people who lived this reality daily. They didn't idolize Jordan. They appreciated him because he didn't pretend the work ended with adoption. He stayed. Staying is the part most people forget. Chance grew healthier, stronger, more confident. He no longer flinched at strangers, but he didn't rush toward them either. Jordan respected that. He protected Chance's boundaries the same way Chance protected his trust. Love respects fear, it doesn't shame it. One evening, Jordan noticed Chance watching the TV animals on screen. Jordan muted the sound. Chance relaxed. Jordan smiled. Even now, he was learning. Healing teaches you to listen differently. The story eventually settled into something quieter. No longer news, just known. And that was exactly how Jordan wanted it. Because this wasn't a chapter he wanted to close. This was a life he wanted to continue. Some stories don't fade. They simply become part of who you are. At some point, the story stopped being about adoption. It became about transformation, not the kind that happens overnight, not the kind you announce, the slow kind, the quiet kind. The most powerful changes don't arrive loudly. They arrive daily. Chance was no longer the stray dog Michael Jordan adopted. He was just there, waiting by the door, sleeping near the window, walking beside Jordan without hesitation. And that was the moment something deeper revealed itself. This wasn't charity. This was relationship. You can't fake consistency. It exposes who you really are. Jordan noticed the small things first. How Chance adjusted his pace to match Jordan's stride. How he leaned slightly toward him when crossing streets. How he waited, not because he was trained, but because he trusted. Jordan had spent his entire life being followed. Now, for the first time, someone followed him without expectation. Loyalty without demand hits differently. Mornings changed. Jordan used to wake up early out of habit. Years of discipline never fade. Now, Chance woke him up, not by barking, not by scratching, just by sitting quietly at the edge of the bed, waiting. Respect shows itself in patience. Jordan found himself laughing more, not loud laughter. The kind that escapes unexpectedly. Chance chasing his own reflection. Chance refusing to step on wet grass. Chance tilting his head at music like he was listening for meaning. Jordan realized something unsettling. He hadn't laughed like this in a long time. Sometimes joy returns disguised as responsibility. Friends noticed the change. They didn't comment on the dog at first. They commented on Jordan. "You seem lighter," one said. Jordan shrugged, didn't explain. How could he? Some things can't be explained without sounding unbelievable. Chance became part of routines Jordan didn't know he needed. Midday breaks turned into short walks. Evenings became quieter. Phones stayed untouched longer. Jordan, who once lived by schedules measured in seconds, now adjusted plans around feeding time. When you care, priorities reorganize themselves. One afternoon, Chance hesitated near a busy road. Cars, horns, sudden noise. Jordan stopped immediately, didn't pull, didn't rush. He knelt, spoke softly. They waited. And when Chance stepped forward, Jordan felt something shift inside him. Leadership isn't about moving first. It's about waiting until others are ready. Jordan had coached teammates before, led teams, driven greatness, but this was different. Chance didn't need motivation. He needed safety. Greatness changes when the goal is comfort, not victory. At night, Chance slept close, but not touching, a distance that spoke of past fear. Jordan respected it. Days later, Chance moved closer. Not because Jordan asked, because Chance chose. Trust always arrives on its own schedule. Jordan remembered moments from his career final shots, roaring crowds, lifted trophies. Those moments were loud. This one wasn't, and yet it felt fuller. Fulfillment doesn't echo, it settles. Jordan started learning Chance's history through behavior, the flinch at raised voices, the alertness around sudden movement. The way Chance scanned rooms before lying down, Jordan never pushed, he adjusted. Empathy is adapting without being asked. One evening, Jordan dropped his keys loudly. Chance startled. Jordan froze, then quietly placed the keys down. He looked at Chance. "I got you," he said softly. Chance relaxed. Safety is built in moments no one sees. Jordan began thinking differently about strength, about patience, about what it meant to win. He had spent decades conquering pressure. Now he was learning to soften it. The strongest people eventually learn gentleness. Chance healed physically faster than emotionally. Jordan understood. Some injuries don't show on X-rays. Invisible wounds take the longest to close. One day, Jordan noticed Chance watching another dog play freely, running, jumping, unafraid. Chance didn't join, he observed. Jordan sat beside him. No words, just presence. Sometimes support means sitting still. Weeks passed. Chance began playing, tentatively, then fully. Jordan watched. Pride welled up. Not the competitive kind, the protective kind. The best victories belong to those who don't realize they're winning. People still whispered, still wondered. Jordan ignored it. This wasn't about image. This was about home. When something matters, opinions fade. Chance started greeting Jordan at the door with confidence. Tail wagging, eyes bright, Jordan realized something else. Chance wasn't just healing, he was anchoring Jordan. Sometimes we rescue what ends up rescuing us. Jordan slept better, thought clearer, moved slower, but felt stronger. The noise of the world felt distant, because something here was real. Peace doesn't shout, it stays. Jordan had once been asked what kept him grounded during his career. He never had a clear answer. Now he did. A quiet presence, 4 paws, no expectations. Grounding isn't found, it's given. One night, Chance rested his head on Jordan's foot. The first time, Jordan didn't move, didn't breathe deeply, just stayed. Some moments are too fragile to touch. That was when Jordan understood. This wasn't a story about adopting a dog. It was a story about choosing care every day, about showing up, about staying. Love is proven through repetition, not gestures. Chance slept soundly. Jordan watched him, and for the first time in a long while, Jordan felt complete without needing to prove anything. Some connections don't add to your life, they redefine it. Legends are usually measured by what they leave behind in record books. But some legacies never appear in statistics, they appear in lives. Greatness isn't always loud enough to be counted. Michael Jordan spent decades being defined by numbers, points, rings, awards, wins. Those numbers made him immortal. But this story, this quiet chapter, revealed something different, something human. Immortality fades, humanity lasts. Chance didn't know who Michael Jordan was. He didn't know about championships or endorsements, didn't care about history or highlights. To Chance, Jordan was simply the man who didn't walk away. The purest judgments come from those who don't know your name. Jordan realized that somewhere along the way, his life had become public property. Opinions, expectations, interpretations, Chance stripped all of that away. There was no reputation to protect here, only presence. When nothing is expected, everything becomes honest. Jordan began reflecting more, not on his career, but on his impact. Not how many he defeated, but how many he steadied. At some point, winning stops meaning beating others. Chance followed Jordan everywhere now, not glued, not dependent, confident, secure. Jordan saw it and felt something shift again. Chance no longer needed saving. He belonged. Belonging is the final stage of healing. Jordan thought about the millions of kids who wore his jersey, the ones who tried to imitate his jump shot. What would they learn from this version of him? Not dominance, but compassion. The lessons that matter most are the ones never taught on purpose. Jordan never made a speech about Chance, never used the story to inspire publicly, yet it inspired anyway. Because it wasn't packaged, it was lived. People follow authenticity even when it's quiet. One afternoon, Jordan watched Chance sleep peacefully in the sunlight. No tension, no alertness, just trust. Jordan understood something deeply then. This was the part of life he had been too busy to notice before. Some rewards only appear after the chase ends. He had chased perfection. Now he practiced presence. He had chased greatness. Now he cultivated gentleness. Growth doesn't always move forward. Sometimes it softens. Jordan realized that his influence didn't have to roar. It could whisper and still be heard. The loudest legacies often echo the shortest. Chance grew older, stronger, healthier, and Jordan grew quieter, more reflective, more patient. They met in the middle. True companionship reshapes both sides. Jordan's life slowed, but it didn't shrink. It expanded in meaning. Every walk, every pause, every moment of care. Purpose doesn't disappear with age, it refines. There was no grand ending to the story. No ceremony, no viral moment, just days adding up. That was the point. Real stories don't end, they continue. Jordan understood now what legacy truly meant. Not how the world remembers you, but how you behave when no one is watching. Character lives in unobserved moments. Chance never thanked Jordan, never could, but every calm breath was gratitude. Every relaxed step was trust. Gratitude doesn't speak, it rests. Jordan thought of all the pressure he once carried. The expectations, the demands. Chance asked for none of it. Only time, only care. Love simplifies what success complicates. Years from now, people would still argue about who the greatest was. That debate would never end. Jordan accepted that, but this story, wasn't up for debate. It was fact. A choice made when walking away would have been easier. Greatness reveals itself when escape is an option. Jordan didn't rescue Chance to change the world. But the world noticed anyway, because people were starving for reminders that kindness still existed. Hope spreads fastest when it isn't forced. Chance lay at Jordan's feet one evening, content, secure. Home, Jordan looked down and smiled, not the smile of victory, the smile of peace. Peace is the rarest achievement of all. This wasn't about a dog. It never was. It was about who we choose to be when life asks nothing from us. Your truest self appears when there's no reward. Jordan didn't need another legacy, but he earned one anyway, not in arenas, in moments. The most meaningful legacies don't need witnesses. And somewhere out there, a stray dog found a home. And a legend found something even rarer. Stillness. Sometimes, the greatest thing you ever do is simply stay.